As part of my ongoing series of frequently asked questions with Jim McKee, my guest today is Dwight Hall, a friend of mine for many years. In fact, we used to ride and fox hunt together, and he is now the chairman of the Iroquois Steeplechase since 2008. Dwight, thanks for joining me today, and I know that many people are interested in the inner workings of the steeplechase and what goes on behind the scenes. But before we get started in all of that, could you first, bring us up to speed on your family, Ann, Gail, Holly, your grandkids? Always like to know about my guest's family.
Well, thank you for asking, Jim. Everybody's doing well. My daughter, who is a horse professional, lives here and also works for me in the Iroquois office and has become a valuable member of that team. She has 2 children now. One is in 6th grade at Harding, and right now is actually gone to class. And then she has her son, who was accepted this year to Princeton.
Oh my goodness! Wow, congratulations!
But unfortunately, he's going to Princeton from Nashville, Tennessee, as Princeton chose not to open the college, and so they're doing everything virtually. It's kind of a disappointment, but. He was also recruited to the rowing team, the crew team, and had been up there and was really looking forward to participating on the varsity this year, as he actually going in has more experience as a coxman than any of their sophomores and juniors who are the existing coxmen. So it's a bit disappointing, but hopefully next year he'll get back to things be normal. And be able to enjoy life on college. So it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
And Gail is doing well. And in fact, she took a hiatus from riding for about 3 or 4 years. And just this past week, Gigi Lazenby from here have started riding together. So kind of fun.
Lots of fun. Now, is this on your new farm?
Yeah, it's on our new farm. And
Great.
we... her mare that she used to fox hunt is still around and doing well, and she actually has 2 of them that she's riding, the younger one. But the other one, I think, trying to encourage her not to get on it.
No, it's a long way down. We don't bounce like we used to.
Boy, that's the truth.
Well, that's great. Dwight, before we move on in our discussion, I know that you have a short video that you feel like would be appropriate to our discussion. And so I want to just sort of push the pause button in our conversation, and we'll watch that video just right now, and then we'll pick up after that, if that's okay.
Great.
Okay. Dwight, you are a historian. You've been around this game for a long, long time. Tell me a little bit about the history of thoroughbred racing in Middle Tennessee.
It's really interesting. Back in the 1800s and up until the very beginning of the 1900s, Nashville was actually the center of thoroughbred breeding and one of the centers of racing. Back in the 1830s, 40s, before the Civil War, then after the Civil War, we were the Lexington of the breeding industry. Here in Nashville, Bellmead Plantation, which is located on Harding Pike, was one of the famous breeding farms. And in fact, a horse that stood stud there by the name of Iroquois, from which we derived the name Iroquois, was a stud and former racehorse that won the American Derby, the Epsom Derby in England, and was the first American horse to do so. They had shipped him over from the United States. He raced in England and then retired at the age of 4 and came back to Belmead Plantation. And his bloodlines are found today in many of our really successful racehorses. Belmead Plantation actually was thousands of acres, encompassed all of Belmead, encompassed Hillwood, and encompassed where Percy Warner Park and Edward Park is, and actually where the steeplechase grounds are. Then at that time, we had many racetracks in Nashville and in Middle Tennessee. Clover Bottom, which was on the site of Hermitage, Andrew Jackson's plantation, was a racetrack. Downtown, where the Parthenon is located, there was a racetrack. In Hillwood, there was another racetrack. So we were a very thriving thoroughbred industry in the middle and late 1800s. All that came to an end in 1905. In 1905, Tennessee outlawed pari-mutuel betting on racing, in which basically killed our industry for thoroughbred breeding. Gradually, after 1905, that industry moved to Lexington, in which it still is the center of the breeding world and thoroughbred horses in the United States. It's interesting. We have basically the same limestone base under our soil that Lexington does. The topography is very similar. So if it had not been for those momentous decisions in 1905, we might have some of those beautiful farms that are located in Lexington, which I know you're very familiar with, having lived there for a period of time.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that is a shame. It would have been a lot of fun to have that here at home in our own backyard. And it's amazing when you drive down Harding Road and you see the Belmead Mansion and Plantation. You have absolutely no idea what all has gone on there in the past, and what great heritage and stories there are. So I appreciate you bringing us up to date on that. How did the Iroquois and the steeplechase course at Percy Warner get started?
It's very interesting. It really dates back to the 1930s, 1928, 1930, and kind of had its foundation in Gallatin, Tennessee. A group of Eastern and Midwestern businessmen, some wealthy businessmen, were looking for the most perfect fox hunting territory in the United States. And they found that Middle Tennessee, specifically an area in Gallatin, had the right temperature throughout the winter, had the right soil, and would be a perfect location to establish a premier hunting area. They acquired about 15,000 acres in Gallatin on a place called Fairview Plantation. Fairview Plantation now is a major housing development and golf course in Middle Tennessee, in Gallatin. They established there was a major mansion on the place, which still stands today. And they developed that as their clubhouse. And they formed a hunt called the Grassland Hunt. And for several years, they would ship their horses down by rail car in the winter and come back and forth, or even stay for the winter in this mansion in Fairview, and fox hunt throughout the winter. As part of their sporting gestures, they decided that they would like to develop a steeplechase on their grounds and have basically kind of a world-renowned steeplechase in the United States, and copy the Grand National, which is one of the great steeplechases in England. And they commissioned a race course that was very similar to the Grand National in England. They ran that race for 2 years. And then after the second year, the Depression hit. And they were not able to continue it the third year. And in fact, shortly thereafter, they disbanded the hunt because of the Depression. So the group of people that were living here in town at the time, Marcellus Frost, Mason Hoagland, John Sloan, all names that some people that know horses would be familiar with, participated and had a number of what they would call farm races. They had one at Green Pastures, which is located on Franklin Road, still is a farm today, owned by Cal Turner. Had several there. They had one out on Sparta Road on the Schwab property. And they had ambitions to kind of grow their steeplechasing interest. A man by the name of Marcellus Frost had been on the lookout for a permanent place in which he could put a really grand steeplechase. And he was riding one day across some open land and came upon a hill and looked down from that hill to this great amphitheater below him. And it was open, and he thought this would be a great place to put in a steeplechase. That hill, it happens to be the hill above the Iroquois Steeplechase race course. And if you've been to the race course, you know that it is really a great amphitheater. It's probably one of the few race courses in the United States that you can see the whole course. Every jump is visible down there, and it created a great vista. He and his group, consisting of Mason and John Sloan, put together plans to try to see what they could do to raise funds to enable the race course to be developed. So in 1937, they had some connections in Washington with the government and were able to convince the WPA, which was the Work Progress Administration that was put together by Franklin Roosevelt, to bring the country out of the Depression. And the WPA put together, worked public projects all over the United States. In Nashville, one of those projects was Percy Warner and Edward Warner Park. All those roads and stone walls and picnic shelters that are there today was actually built by the Public Works program. They somehow convinced them that it would be a grand idea to also build a steeplechase course. And, fortunately for us, it was an amazing job, and they used at the time very high-tech engineering. The drainage system, the culverts, the bank terms are all still there today, and still very much, still give us one of the best race courses in the United States. So the course was started, construction of the course started in 1938. They'd hoped they would be able to have their first race in 1940, but delay in getting the stables built, some other infrastructure, pushed it to 1941. So in 1941, they had the very first race meet, and according to the newspaper accounts, much like today, it jammed Old Hickory Boulevard. They said there were 10 to 12,000 cars basically in a traffic jam on Old Hickory Boulevard.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and they estimated that probably 40,000 people attended.
Oh no.
Yeah, and they all sat on the hill. There was no infield picnicking. It was all spread across that hill looking down on the race course. So from 1941, we have been running that race with two interruptions, one in 1944 for the war and 2020 for, as we all know, we're experiencing.
Yeah, that's the World War II and the pandemic. Well, I know it's a fabulous course, and you all have worked very hard to not only maintain it, but to improve it. And the footing there is excellent, and owners and trainers from across the country love to come to Nashville for many, many reasons, one of them being the course itself. It's so safe for the horses, and their horses perform so well here. So that's great, and that's a tribute to you and your team.
One of the things we want to do for the race course is make it as safe as possible for the horses. We maintain that race course. Metro does not maintain it. We maintain the grounds on the race course. We maintain the barn area. The course itself, it feels like almost you're walking on sponge rubber. It feels that the grass and the subsoil, and we have been very fortunate since we've been doing that, and along with the sprinkler system. We have a golf course sprinkler system so that If we have a dry period, it doesn't make any difference. We can maintain the moisture level almost to perfection.
Wow. Wow. Well, I do know that the gentleman who's in charge of the turf, I think is here in Nashville, but he's being used at racetracks all over the country because of his expertise.
Yeah, he sure has. Dave Green, who basically started in the early 80s and until just 2 years ago was the superintendent and the clerk of the course. And then his protege has carried on, Jimmy Woods, and he's now maintained the course for us. And you're right, it is recognized, and I'm not bragging, as one of the best race courses and turf courses in the United States.
Right. Is the steeplechase course or that whole park area used for anything else other than the steeplechase?
The actual race course itself is not. The infield is used by the Pony Club for basically their events, for training. They have cross-country fences in there. They use it. They use the barn area. The parking lot by the barn is open to the public and provides access to all the equestrian trails that are up behind the race course that go through Percy Warner Park. On any pretty weekend, you'll find, hard to find a place to park because of the number of people who are riding in the park out there on the trails.
Right. Well, Dwight, tell me a little bit about the steeplechase horse. What breed are they, and how do they end up to participate and compete in the world of race of steeplechasing?
Actually, that's an interesting question because a lot of people are always asking, well, what kind of breed or what breed is a steeplechase horse? A steeplechase horse is a thoroughbred, and that is they are the same horse that you see running at the flat tracks at Kentucky, at Keeneland, at Churchill Downs, at the Belmont. And in fact, probably 95% of the steeplechase horses have been flat horses. And now steeplechasing is their second career. They have transitioned into steeplechasing for various reasons. Some of them don't do well at the flat track. Others don't like the gate. Some of them have basically just because of they've been running for several years. They've outgrown their conditions, but they're still very healthy, still very fast. And so steeplechasing gives them another career. But they're the exact same horse that you've seen running in the Kentucky Derby. In fact, a number of years ago, probably 4 years ago, a horse called Mr. Hot Stuff had been 2 years before a participant in the Kentucky Derby.
Wow, that's exciting. Tell me about the jockeys. Are the riders that you see on these steeplechase horses the same riders that you see on the flat tracks, like at Churchill Downs and Keeneland and New York?
They're different jockeys. They are larger. The weights for steeplechase, the minimum weight for a steeplechase horse is 130. The average weight for a steeplechase race is about 145 to 155. So most of them are almost average size. They're my size, actually. And, I'm 5'10". So, they're not the small statured people that you see at the flat track. They're bigger, a little bit stronger. So although they ride as well as the flat track jockeys, they are much larger.
Right. Yeah. And I would think it's a little bit more thrilling for them and quite a bit more dangerous.
Yep, it is that. About 1 out of every 10 races, you can expect to hit the ground.
Yeah. Collarbones and other bones are easily broken.
Yeah.
The steeplechase, as I remember correctly, it's the second Saturday of May routinely. It wasn't this year, of course, but it's always the second Saturday in May. The first Saturday in May is the Kentucky Derby. It's a big production, but at the same time, there's a major charitable component to it. Can you describe that to us? It
is. It is a major production, I can tell you that. but it has given, our major benefactor is Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. Since 1981, we've given over $10 million to Vanderbilt
Wow.
Children's Hospital, which is just a wonderful place. I can tell you, the work they do at the Children's Hospital is just amazing. Some of the things they do for children, that very young children, we're talking 2, 3, 4, 5 years old with cancer, and what they're able to do to cure that or enable them to have normal lives. It's just amazing. The staff down there are so dedicated to their jobs. Every time I go down, I almost want to cry. It's just so heartwarming. And I would urge anybody that if they're there, if they'd like to take a tour, or to give money to the hospital, it is one of the most worthwhile causes I know of. The other place we give, not quite to that extent, but is Friends of Warner Park. We, besides maintaining the grounds for the steeplechase course, we maintain the barn. We maintain those blackboard fences that are around there, as well as making a dollar donation to them, because it's very important to us that the park exists for many more years and for our kids and their grandkids. So we think that's a really worthwhile charity. So those are our two main benefactors. We have some others, but not quite to that extent.
Wow. Well, that's neat, and that's great that you all do recognize the Children's Hospital and are such great supporters. Are there other steeplechase races around the country?
There are. You know, it's interesting. Some people, you know, the average person going to the races here in Nashville, that's probably the only race they go to. They may have never even seen another steeplechase race, and some of them think that it's the only one-time race a year in the United States. But interestingly, steeplechasing is a circuit. Starts in March, at the end of March, in South Carolina, Aiken, South Carolina. And there's 1 to 2, 3, 4, sometimes some weekends even 4 race meets throughout the spring. Typically ends at the end of May, and then moves to the flat track in the summer. Right now we race at Monmouth Park in New Jersey, and then for 9 weeks at Saratoga in New York. And then again in the fall, when Saratoga ends, it picks up. Well, actually, from Saratoga, we have 2 races at Belmont, 2 stakes races at Belmont. And then in the fall, it picks back up again with racing every single weekend through November. Most of the racing occurs in North and South Carolina, Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. In the fall, we end up the season in Charleston, South Carolina, with a race over there. The race before that's in Callaway Gardens, which is on the Callaway Gardens property. So it's a whole circuit. There's about 38 races throughout the spring and the fall, not including the summer track break. So there's a large group of horses. Actually, obviously, they're not the same horses week to week. The horse will race probably every 3 to 4 weeks. So there's different groups, but the jockeys and the trainers are the same every week to week. So it's very much a circuit.
Okay. Could I get you to step back then and qualify what you mean by having steeplechase racing at flat tracks like Saratoga and Monmouth and all? I know the answer to my question, but I'm going to ask you to describe it. Are they putting the jumps on the dirt track, or how does that work?
That's a great question. Actually, we put the jumps, which our jumps are portable. They're called national fences, and they are actually shipped around from race to race on tractor trailers. And at the flat track, like Saratoga or Belmont, they're set on the turf course. The racing is over the turf course. So it's a bit of a different kind of racing in terms to the what are called the hunt meets, which we call the Iroquois hunt meet, where the course has got some hills. A lot of the courses have more than one turn, kind of undulating, whereas the flat track is completely flat, and the races are a bit faster because it is flat, but they are on the turf, not on the dirt.
Okay, good, good. I know there's the National Steeplechase Association. What is that? Where does that come into play?
Well, the National Steeplechase Association is a governing body of steeplechasing. They take all the entries, they administer all the licensing, they distribute the purses, they act as a racing commission for the racing. They sanction, if you want to have a sanctioned race meet, you have to apply to the National Steeplechase Association. So it is much like, it's a central organization, just like the NFL or Major League Baseball central office would be. They manage all the aspects so that the rules and the regulations, unlike flat racing, which has can have different rules and regulations for each state. Steeplechasing has uniform rules and regulations, uniform drug testing, and it makes for a lot more orderly process.
Right, right. Well, I know that for many years they fought the battle on flat tracks trying to get the uniformity, consistency from state to state, and they still haven't gotten that worked out, but it's still very much a hot topic. How has COVID affected steeplechase racing this year?
COVID has been a disaster. We had, obviously, we had to cancel the Iroquois the whole spring season with the exception of 2 race meets in June, which were Middleburg, Virginia, and the Gold Cup, International Gold Cup in the Plains, Virginia, were the only 2 race meets that ran this spring. Everybody else had to cancel. We were able to run at Saratoga. The flat tracks were able to open. They ran without spectators under very stringent protocol, but we were able to get in 9 races there. So that helped. This fall, we've got 6 race meets that are going to be able to run. A number of them did have to cancel, but we are having 6. In fact, we've already had 2 this year. Foxfield and Middleburg ran. The Fall Gold Cup is running this weekend, and we'll run up through the middle of November and end the season with Charleston. It has been a very difficult time for the owners, for the trainers, as you can imagine. An owner had a stable full of racehorses in training, which is not an inexpensive proposition. And, you know, what were they had to make a decision what they were going to do. Most of them kept their horses in training, hoping they could be able to run and earn some purses and pay for some of those training bills. Fortunately, we had 2 in the spring rather, and then the flat track this summer and then this fall. And I would tell you that all the races this fall have been overfilled. Most of the maiden races have been split, and still there are horses left on the also eligible list, which means they didn't get to race. So it's been 20 to 25 horses in the maiden races entered, and all the others have really filled. So the trainers and the owners are really eager to try to give their horses racing opportunities.
Right, right. Have any local owners, trainers, or jockeys in Middle Tennessee that participate in steeplechasing?
Yeah, we do. We've got now, and actually that's a growing. We now have several owners here, a couple of new owners. Virginia Lazenby has a stable. Her trainers in Camden, South Carolina. We have Mark McMillan, whose family has been great supporters of the Iroquois for years. His father was the paddock master for as long as I can remember. Mark has assumed that duty, and 2 years ago, Mark has started acquiring some horses. I'm not sure how many he has now. I'm pretty sure it's at least 3, as I see different names popping up from week to week. I would tell you, he has great hopes of being able to have an Iroquois horse, and he's working that way. I think he would have had at least a couple of horses run here this spring. Unfortunately, COVID took care of that, but his horses are running right now. Yeah. A local trainer that lives in Cornersville, Ted Thompson, trains for some local owners. One is a syndicate that has several of the local Hillsborough Hounds fox hunting group are members of it. And then he just acquired a new owner this year whose horse just ran for the first time, Brownland Farm LLC, which is
very good.
Yeah, Robin and Michelle Anderson, and so they're kind of honoring Sissy, his mother, and Brownland Farm. They're running under the stable name Brownland Farm. So we've been adding some new people here, and which is kind of exciting to have some local owners. And as I say, we've had local trainer in Ted Thompson at Cornersville. Right now, we don't have any local jockeys. We had one in a gentleman by the name of Gus Dahl, who retired a couple years ago, and he rode for a number of years. He's still fairly young. He's probably in his late 20s now, but hopefully we'll develop somebody, especially through these new owners in the future.
Sure. Well, that's great. That's great. Dwight, let's turn the focus on you. What are your responsibilities as the chairman of the Iroquois Steeplechase?
That's a good question. As chairman, I mean, my overall responsibilities is to oversee really the whole operation in conjunction with our president, Mary Ann Bird. We have a staff of 3 people in the office. It's actually a 12-month-a-year operation. It takes, basically for ticketing and sales and sponsorship, we have to work at it all year long. When we start selling tickets in December, January, renewing the boxes, dealing with all the vendors through the first 6 months of the year to be able to happen on May 9th. There's a lot that goes into it besides just putting on the race. We have a lot of sponsors, some major sponsors. Bank of America is our presenting sponsor. We have other major, Brown Advisory, TBB Capital, Andrews Cadillac. All those people, we have to make sure that they're getting their benefits and the recognition that they deserve. And then pulling together all the logistics that go with it. We have hundreds of porta potties out there, probably 50 to 100 tents, and putting on a party behind the boxes. One of the places behind the boxes called the Paddock Club has about 700 patrons. The Iroquois Society, which is another lunch area, has about 400 people. 2 other tents, 600 people in them. So organizing all those logistics, takes 12 months to get it done. Putting on the racing part's easy. compared to the other part. But and then we have to maintain the course. We have a full-time employee, which I mentioned was Dave Green's protege. Takes care of the grass 12 months a year. If you did not maintain the course, it would shortly look like a weed patch. I can tell you if you don't take care. Just like you can tell somebody that pays attention to their lawn.
Exactly. Well, it's a well-manicured lawn, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Finally, apart from the Iroquois, what other aspects of steeplechase are you involved in?
I'm very active in the National Steeplechase Association. I've been on the board of directors probably for 9 years. On different terms, you can serve 2 3-year terms. Actually, 12 years I've been on the board. I've been member of the executive committee. I've been the treasurer of the National Steeplechase Association. I head up the regulatory side, which basically acts as the racing commission, whereas we license all the participants. We have the hearings when there's appeals. We do the judicial things. We oversee the rule book. So I've been head of that committee for 12 years, the whole time I've been on the board. I also served on the safety committee and currently am serving on the growth and promotion. Actually, I'm chairman of the growth and promotion committee.
Wow.
And another committee that basically as a future committee looking at the future of our staff and the direction the National Steeplechase Association is going to go in. So I kind of keep my toe in the water there.
Well, it's more than your toe. You wear lots of different hats. It's,
Yeah.
I'm sure at times it gets a little confusing for you, but that's great.
You've moved here from Nashville a number of years ago. You're originally from Nashville, I know, and
Right.
you go back a long way. But you spent a number of years, I know, in Lexington. And I'd be curious to know, and I think probably some people would be curious to know what you were doing in Lexington, and then what brought you back to Nashville, and what's going on in your life here in Nashville and with you and your family and all your grandkids, which I see pictures of, which you've got a great family and a lot of grandkids there. So catch me up to date on what's happening with your life.
Well, you're right. My wife Harriet and I were both born and raised in Nashville, and we grew up riding hunters and jumpers and showing, and certainly spent more than enough time at Brownland Farm, which is an institution in the horse world in Middle Tennessee. And when I was in college, thinking about what I wanted to do when I grew up, I decided I wanted to go to vet school and work on horses, and was fortunate enough then to come back to Tennessee and go to school at the University of Tennessee Vet School. I was in the second class to graduate, so they started that school just in time for me. And from there, I was very fortunate enough to move to Lexington, Kentucky, and I joined the practice of Johnny Griggs, who is a past great supporter of the Nashville Iroquois Steeplechase, and was a veterinarian there in Lexington, and actually we lived there for about 25 years. And I was basically a farm veterinarian doing reproductive work, working with the mares and foals. Occasionally I'd go to the racetrack if I had a client with a particular problem, you know, a special one-stop need or something, I would go to the track for that. But primarily I was going from farm to farm on a regular basis, checking the mares and getting them in foal, and then working the horse sales for yearlings, weanlings, and mares and foals, and quite a bit with all of that. We came back to Nashville in 2005. Our daughter was here, married to a law student at Vanderbilt, and she was pregnant. So we came back to be grandparents, and did that, and practiced for 2 or 3 years in Middle Tennessee. Our daughter's husband is from Mississippi, and so they moved back to Mississippi. He is one of 5 siblings, and so they're down in Mississippi, and they have four children, and our grandchildren down there are surrounded by aunts and uncles and cousins, so that's a great spot for them. And then we have 2 sons. Both of them live in Dallas, Texas, and one son's got 4 children, and so we get down to Dallas. We've actually been down twice this fall for different events and different things. So that's kind of where our children are, and we do have a total of 8 grandchildren, and they're just a lot of fun and a great blessing. Growing up, my father had an insurance agency in Nashville called McKee, Genie and Thornton, and it was down on the West End, just right there at the area of Murphy Road, in that same strip of old homes where Maggiano's is now. They had 2 old homes right there side by side. So I had a background in insurance, and when I stopped practicing in Middle Tennessee, I was looking around for the next great big thing, and thought about insurance and had an opportunity. So ultimately now I've got an insurance agency in Cool Springs, and we do personal lines, home, auto, and umbrella. We do high value homes, which take a different group of carriers. And we also have commercial. We do businesses, workers' comp, property, business, automobile, general liability, all of those types of things. And then finally, because of my background in horses, I do also do horse farms and equine mortality and major medical. So we're here in Cool Springs having a great time. You know, I have to confess, at this stage of my life, it's nice kind of having a day job as opposed to getting called out in the middle of the night for all kinds of different things. So that's a relief for me.
You know, it's interesting. I'm not sure, unless you're in the horse world, you know, realize how physically difficult job being a veterinarian is. It's working with horses, and they're big 1,200-pound animals. And I'm sure when you retired, it was nice to get rid of probably some of the aches and pains you had to live with from dealing with big mares and rambunctious foals and things. So it's not like quite being a normal doctor where you can ask them how people feel and tell them to pick up their leg. You have to pick up their leg.
Exactly. Well, I have had 2 back surgeries since I've stopped practicing, and I guess I can blame that or say that's a result of being an equine veterinarian. But it was great. Loved every minute of it. But, our lives change. We move on to the different things. So this is where I am now and excited about it.
Yeah.
Well, Dwight, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation, and I thank you very much.
But thank you for having me.
Good. All right.